looking at international career pathways. I think all of you are in for a real treat. We have an enormously distinguished and experienced group of people that will speak with you today, and also a very diverse group with a very interesting background. So I think if you're interested in careers in this area, you've definitely come to the right place today. Our first speaker today is Dr. Sidney Coupet. He is the founder and executive director of Doctors United for Haiti, or DUFH. He is an internal medicine physician. He is currently a 2011 through 2013 Robert Wood Johnson Clinical Scholar at the University of Michigan. He completed his undergraduate degree in biology at Gannon University in Erie, Pennsylvania. He obtained his medical degree at Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine and went on to obtain a master's in public health at the University of Pittsburgh School of Public Health. He then completed his residency training in internal medicine at Geisinger Medical Center in Danville, Pennsylvania. Dr. Coupet is interested in improving the health of diaspora communities in the United States and increasing the understanding of transnational influences on the U.S. healthcare system. He aims to conduct and promote research on the health impact of transnational communities, create policies that support global coordination of healthcare in the U.S. and abroad, and establish effective healthcare delivery system models for vulnerable populations. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Coupet.
Thank you, everyone, for the warm welcoming. I'm not sure of my timing here. Maybe
15 to 20 minutes.
wow, I don't think I'll need that long, but certainly thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and it's very nice to know that so many people at the University of Michigan is interested in global health. My presentation would probably be involving my initial interest and what started my interest in global health. And I think that's more important at this point. And later on, we can go into more details about my specific organization and what we are doing at Doctors United for Haiti. So it started actually probably at the same time you're in. I believe some people here are sophomores or juniors in college. For me, it started when I was a freshman in college. And I started basically volunteering with different humanitarian aid organizations. It was definitely a very, I should say, a really interesting experience for me because, so the country of interest for me is Haiti, and that's where my parents are from. But I had other interests, so I traveled to different countries in Africa as well, but I really focused on Haiti for the most part. And I really volunteered with different organizations, such as Partners in Health, Albert Schweitzer Hospital during the time when I was in college. And, And so, during those times, what I've recognized is that there was something missing during my experiences as a student volunteer. When I was there, I realized we helped a lot of people. We did a lot of agricultural type of volunteering. We helped with building trees and so forth. And more specifically, we even did healthcare type of volunteering, which involved, for me at least as a student, maybe just coordinating the process of patients. So I did a lot of crowd control, I did maybe some vital signs, etc. as a student. And it was very simple. And again, you know, at that point, I always knew I wanted to become a doctor, but nonetheless, my experience really was very minimal in that aspect. But I felt very helpful. But again, what I noticed was that there was a lack of capacity building during all of these activities. And I guess let me really describe what that is. We're there to help a group of people. And we were doing that, indeed. But the team that was helping did not include any of the natives that we were helping. And immediately we knew there was a problem. And so at this point we said, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of natives who are experienced as well in providing this type of care. We're providing primary preventative services at the time. For me, I really wasn't. It was the physicians that we were with, traveling, that were providing the care. And so that became my interest for a very long time. How can we provide assistance to a group of people, but yet also train them to be able to provide assistance for themselves. And so immediately, as an undergrad student, I did some work and looking at how can we train natives, and more specifically, Haitians, because I was interested in Haiti. And so when I got into medical school, this really fascinated me. And so I pursued my master's in public health, and my thesis was, how can we incorporate westernized medicine into a developing country like Haiti? And the key component of it is training. And this is the fancy way of calling capacity building. So at this point, there was a lack of that during the 2005 in most NGOs that I participated in. And they attempted the capacity building, but their main focus was not that during that point in time. And so that's how Doctors United for Haiti evolved, because our organization really focused on capacity building with healthcare providers in Haiti. Now, beyond that, there's something called sustainability. Okay, so how can we create an environment in which the natives can sustain whatever we're teaching them? So for instance, if it's maybe treating high blood pressure, treating diabetes of some sort, what exactly can we incorporate in all of our assistance to make these type of activities more sustainable? Because at the end of the day, I have to come back to the United States to finish my education, right? Most people don't plan to go to Haiti and stay, especially if you're not from Haiti, right? So we have to really consider those issues, and we did. And so at this point, the key for us in terms of sustainability is creating a capacity, an environment where resources are becoming more readily available. So for us, we're training not only continuing medical education for providers, but we're also teaching them how to maybe provide, for instance, grant writing, locate resources within their environment. And as you know, Haiti has a lack of resources in every sector you could imagine. But there are opportunities there, and we need to locate them. And so what we do, we identify opportunities for improvement as well within each facilities, and so it's not specifically with just providers, but we also identify opportunities for improvement that will create these opportunities so they can have a more sustainable work effort. So I think for me, for the most part, when I started in terms of the global health arena, it was really an anecdote, a personal anecdote of mine that I just identified one thing that was missing. And I would have never thought it would have led me to this point in my career. So again, I'm not going to spend too much time in terms of the details. And I can tell you more, and as you ask questions, I can answer them. But I think the thing I want to send, a message that I want to send, is that any one of you can identify an issue. And once you identify that issue, I encourage you to pursue it, and because that's what I did. And look into it and see, is it fair? Is it something that our own people here in the United States would accept? Because at the end of the day, everyone are human beings, and in Haiti, they are also human beings. And so for me, it's more of a personal mission as well as a professional mission. So I think, at this point, I'm going to stop. And but I would say that would be my presentation for today in terms of the organization and what we're doing at Doctors United for Haiti. If you have any questions, you could ask me while we're in the panel. I don't know if that was appropriate in terms of what you were looking for. Okay. All right.
I'd like to introduce our second speaker today, Christine Claypoole. Ms. Claypoole is currently the Deputy Director, International Division at John Snow Incorporated. She has over 15 years experience in maternal and child health, HIV/AIDS, cancer, and reproductive health in Africa, Asia, and Eastern Europe. Her specialties include program design and management, strategic planning, research, capacity building, behavior change communications, and social marketing. She has worked extensively in South Africa, Ethiopia, Ukraine, South Sudan, Ghana, Cambodia, Indonesia, and Benin. In addition, she has worked in the private sector in marketing and communications. Ms. Claypoole has an MPH from Johns Hopkins University and a BS from Cornell University. She also is currently president of the Boston Area Returned Peace Corps Volunteers, a nonprofit organization that supports over 450 such Peace Corps volunteers in the area. So it's my pleasure to have the next speaker.
Well, thank you, everyone. And I know I see some familiar faces because I talked to some of you this afternoon, so my apologies if some of this is repetitive. But I also thought it was really interesting because Sidney talked about his work in Haiti, and we're sort of at opposite ends. You're very focused on a country and an area that you love, and I'm sort of wide and broad and have done a lot of different things in a lot of different ways, which is what really is interesting to me about public health, is the fact that I have been able to do a lot of different things in a lot of different places, and I've done that on purpose throughout my career. So just to talk to you a little bit about what I do at JSI. Sorry, is that feedback still bad?
No, it's
okay. Okay. In my role, I think of my job in thirds. About a third of what I do is direct program support. So I work on some projects recently in South Africa and Mexico, Ethiopia. Another third of what I do is new business development and proposals, which are key to probably all of our jobs in some way. And then the last third I do is to help support things within our division. And that relates to professional development of folks within our division, strategy, internal meetings, personnel issues, etc. So my day-to-day can vary. One day I might be doing one thing, and the next day I might be doing something else. And again, that's what I enjoy in terms of my role. My path to public health has not been straightforward, and I'm actually happy to tell you guys that, because I think, especially today, people have this sense of like, oh, I need to identify now what I'm going to be doing 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. And my career path wasn't like that. I originally started off in the private sector. I was very interested in advertising. I had worked in advertising throughout college, and then a little bit after college, and then I applied for the Peace Corps. And I made the decision to go into the Peace Corps because I figured I could always work on Madison Avenue. Though that being said, I've always been interested in what the private sector brings and what skills and opportunities they have, and how do I apply that to the field of global health. So I did the Peace Corps, and then I actually got my master's degree in public health, but then I went to work for PSI, which does social marketing, which was a perfect combination for me at the time, because they take commercial marketing techniques and apply it to the public sector. So I did that for a number of years in a couple of different countries, and then I got tired of public health, and I left it. I said, you know, I'm not really seeing results. I feel like I'm too far removed from it, and I want something more tangible, and I went back into the private sector, and I worked in marketing and communications for a financial company. And my life was split between traveling to New York City on a regular basis in Boston. So it was very different, and I really enjoyed that, but it also made me realize that my heart is in public health, and that I'd always be having to figure out the marriage between these two interests of mine. And again, what I like about public health is the fact that you can do that. It is an industry where you can say, you know what, I'm interested in this, and I'm interested in that, and I'm going to find a way to make it work. So I know sometimes people are like, how do I do this? I want to do law, but I want to do public health. Or I want to do, you know, I don't know, race car driving in public health. Who knows? But there are those opportunities out there to do that. And you might be forging your own path. But again, that's one of the beauties of this industry. That being said, I still continue to work with private sector, and I tend to do a lot of private-public partnership work within JSI as sort of one of my side interests in addition to everything else I do. So if you are interested in some of that, I'm happy to talk to you after this. Skills that I think are most useful. I told the group of students I talked to today, writing is essential. I can't emphasize enough how important it is that you learn how to write well. You will use it every single day for the rest of your life, whether it's professional emails, whether it's reports, whether it's proposals, whether it's a memo to the Ministry of Health, whether it's a white paper. Knowing how to write well is going to be critical. And in a lot of ways, I think it's a skill that has been sort of lost in recent years, especially given how often we can quickly summarize or abbreviate what we want to say. And when you get back out in the world, it's still essential, and it's really important in a lot of countries where things are still done very formally. So if you haven't taken a writing course, and I know it sounds really boring, I would encourage you to do that, or ask somebody about your writing. And if it's not your strong suit, work on it, because you're going to need it. And a lot of employers actually have you do a writing test or look at some of your writing examples, and more that have you do a writing test, because we all can spend hours with a writing sample and getting it up to speed. So I just think it's really critical in terms of skills. I think the other thing is that when people talk to me about going into the field of public health, I let them know that nowadays you're not going to be out there vaccinating children. As Sidney mentioned, there are plenty of people within the countries we work in who are capable of doing that. And in fact, we've done exactly what we're supposed to do in this field. We've built the capacity of host country nationals so that they can do that. What more and more our skills are that we bring to it is things like analysis, the ability to conceptualize, to think strategically. So you're not going to go in there and say, wow, I'm going to be at the clinic level. More than likely, you're going to be training people who already have a lot of skills and building their capacity to do that. So understanding that and really thinking about your ability to analyze and conceptualize can be very helpful. And it can be helpful when you go into an interview and you say, you know what, I know that these are the skills that are important at this point in global health, and this is what I've done in my past that exemplifies that. Along with that, I think budgeting, knowing numbers is really important. I know a lot of people are scared of them, but you can be the best technical person out there in the world, but if you run out of money, you're not going to be able to implement what you want to implement. And it's very important for folks to understand how budgets are put together, how costs are decided, what happens to that money, how does it flow. It's just critical. So I would say if you haven't done any kind of quantitative work, especially around budgets and finances, dip your toe in it. It's not so scary. It's actually quite interesting in terms of how money is decided when they do programming of projects. Advice. There are jobs in this field. I know a lot of people are worried about it, but there's still a lot of jobs in this field. And even more importantly, and I don't know what the other panelists think about this, but there are a lot of people at the older end of the spectrum, older age, that are moving out of this. And so there's going to be, I think, even more people coming into this industry, but I think there's a lot of opportunity. And so don't get disheartened by it. It might take a while. The industry is changing. It is shifting. But the opportunities are still there. And if you want to work overseas, one of the things I learned, and I said this to folks this afternoon, is if you want to work overseas, you might have to pick up and move to that country. It's a lot more expensive to hire you in the United States and send you over than it is to be in that country and knock on a couple of doors and say, you know what, I can write, I can edit your reports. I'm happy to do, basic work for you, and get your foot in the door, and then it snowballs from there. And I know that's a big leap for people, but it is one of the ways in which if you want overseas experience and you want to continue in this field, you can do that. Again, because skills like being able to write in English are really important for a lot of international organizations. Job market and job trends. Well, I think, again, Sidney mentioned a really important one, which is a lot of the work today is about capacity building. Capacity building of individuals and capacity building of organizations. So I think the more you can show that you've actually trained other people or built their capacity or facilitated or did something that you transferred skills or knowledge, I think those are really important to talk about in interviews, because it is a lot about that these days. It's a big buzzword, but it's also a priority. It's a priority for the U.S. government in terms of their programming. It's a priority for JSI in terms of the organizations we work with. And again, it's not just on an individual level, but it's also on an organizational level. more and more funding is going to local organizations within many of the countries we work. But a lot of those organizations have a lot of passionate people about the technical area, but they don't necessarily always know how to run an NGO, or how to submit a proposal, or how to evaluate their projects such that they can show results. And that's again what all of you, what I do, and the rest of the panelists do, is we bring that to them, and then we, help to build their capacity in it. So I think on that I'm going to allow other people to talk, but I'm happy to answer questions afterwards if you have any. Thank you.
Our next panelist is Dr. Wynn Brown. Dr. Brown arrived at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in January of this year, where he is a senior program officer, measurement, learning, and evaluation family health program in that program. He arrived in January from South Africa, where since 2007 he served as the Director of Strategic Information for USAID's largest PEPFAR country program. During the 2 years prior to South Africa, Dr. Brown was at the Futures Group, where with the Measure Evaluation Project, he co-authored the key data quality components of the Global Toolkit for PEPFAR and the Global Fund. From 1995 to 2004, Wynn was on the faculty at the University of Michigan School of Public Health, once we know each other, and where he designed and taught the core courses, Techniques of Survey Analysis, Evaluation Methodology, and Population Change in Public Health. From 1992 to 1995, Dr. Brown served at the USAID mission in New Delhi during the inaugural period of the Innovations in Family Planning Services, IFPS project. Dr. Brown has spent more than 30 years living and working in low-income countries. He received his bachelor's degree in Arabic language and literature from Georgetown University in 1983, and his MS in city and regional planning, and PhD in population and development program from Cornell University in 1988 and 1994, respectively. Dr. Brown.
Thank you very much. So that old person that Christine was talking about, yeah, that would probably be me. It's really nice to be back
What does
here.
that make me?
So I'm also just going to go off this flyer that you have and just try to cover the bullet points on the bottom there, if that's okay with you. A couple things are already wrong with this talk. First, I'm not using PowerPoint. And at the Gates Foundation, it's sort of a requirement to use PowerPoint because we work for the man who brought us PowerPoint. He invented PowerPoint. So it's very normative at the Gates Foundation to have quite elaborate PowerPoints. But it's such a relief not to be on PowerPoint. So thank you very much for that. Again, the other thing that's wrong with this talk is that there are no whiteboards with felt pens, with dry markers, because another defining feature of the Gates Foundation is every single meeting room is pretty much dominated by at least 3 sides of whiteboards. And whether it's a small meeting room or quite a large one, it's a fight really to see who gets the dry eraser, or sort of the dry marker first, and starts to conceptualize an argument by drawing pictures, boxes and lines and causal diagrams. So maybe we should get to that when we get to the skill part of the talk, because you've got to be able to do that. So top of the bullet points. I got into the international health field quite a long time back, as a child really, because my father's a Middle Eastern historian, so when he would go overseas, all of us would go overseas, generally to the Middle East, some Middle Eastern countries. So I think the bug bit pretty early, and I was accustomed to being in very cross-cultural contexts. I knew how to travel. I was in different schools. I gradually learned languages, and I guess that's a break that I had, but I think we all have those kinds of breaks. There's something that your parents or your background or your family history has endowed you with, and it makes you unique, and if you can find that, I think you jump on that, because it's part of who you are, and you can really run far with that because it feels like it's coming from inside. But it was a bit of a special break. So by the time I got to college, I had lived in a lot of countries and could sort of already have on my CV, which I didn't even have at that time, but I could have put down sort of lived and studied and worked in lots of different countries. And I think, as Christine said, that matters quite a bit, just sort of being able to convince someone who might provide you with a short-term contract, the idea that you lived overseas, that you can travel, you are, what's the word? You can, well, I was hoping the word would come from you, intrepid, adventurous, curious, flexible, tolerant. Yeah, those are kind of, if you can live overseas in these somewhat challenging contexts and flourish there, chances are very high that you have those qualities that we all value. But anyway, that's how I got into things. And then, gradually I just began to ask myself later on, why are people the way they are? Why do people do the things that they do? And then later on, sort of health-wise, it's all about variation. Why do some populations die at higher rates than other populations? Why is there a gender gap in X, Y, and Z variables? And you're asking yourself those same things, but the answers are, you're always finding pieces of them, and at some point you'll turn over that larger stone and sort of say, aha, that's it. If I just study more of this, some aspect of global health, find a lot of those answers. So there's that sort of really understand that being curious is way more important than getting good grades. Really much more important, I think. No one ever will look at your grades. Sorry, Tom, about that.
Today's session's past due.
And so I'm down to the third point now, and that's about skills. So Christina really nailed this, so I won't go over the whole thing. But we're working around a lot of people who are highly trained. So if there were a whiteboard here, I could go up and sort of draw. I could talk about a particular problem and portray that problem in mathematical terms, and ooh, I'm so smart, and isn't that interesting? And then Tom could join in and say, no, you forgot to assign a 0 to that term. So the technical skills are, I think, critical. I would, in fact, urge you to go the more quantitative side to the extent you can. I would try to really understand what are statistics, because I really feel like even in our advanced stages, a lot of our colleagues don't truly understand things like statistical power. And it is a wonderful thing when you wake up one day and you think, wow, I finally know statistics. It's like my world changes. Oh, well, maybe that's just me. Sorry, so I think you need to have that. I think you need to try to create an interest in data. Where do data come from? How do I use data to monitor progress of a particular program? How do we use data to evaluate something? And if I want to evaluate some program, did this program work? What's the evaluation question that I need to ask, and how do I assign data to that question? And if I wanted to talk to maybe teenagers, how would I in fact draw a picture of that problem on a whiteboard such that everyone would be able to understand it? So there's a demystification process, and I think that's a critical one. I think you talked about that in the Haiti context, training others, training our own colleagues, training our children, training anyone who will tolerate you training them is a really important and a rewarding thing to do. And most of the time, that means taking all your very high level training, because you're here at this place, so you're all really smart. You got it, but it really means making the complex very, very understandable. That's a really great skill. But I wanted to get to the other part, and we don't teach this in graduate school, and it's sort of like, who are you as a person trying to get into public health. How do you present yourself to your public sphere? And so much of the problems we have in global health, public health, in the jobs that we do, the places we work, if sort of we want to, and I really need a whiteboard now, but you know, if the whole problem is sort of to move from this point to that point, that's the whole problem. And sort of solving it means you move from there to there. I would say that at least 3/4 of making that move is how to build relationships and how to be a good colleague. And I don't really know how to do that. That's up to each of you. I'm not sure, you know, that's an intangible, that's not particularly concrete, but it's just critical. I don't want to say anything corny like show good manners or dress well. Maybe those things are part of it, but just a lot of it is sort of how do you be a good classmate? You know, what makes you a good classmate to your to the other students who are in your lectures or your classes? What makes you a good colleague? Whatever those things are, how do you make friends and sort of keep friends and really enjoy that interpersonal dynamic? Those things are really, really critical. And in the sort of pragmatic sense, a lot of times your very first job, that little doorway into a career that might open is maybe a 3-month contract. You don't have much time. So in that little 3 months, you've got to probably show that you can write a briefing paper, write a report that doesn't go on and on and on, or that doesn't take some kind of a weird fringe ideological slant, but really just nails, here's what we're talking about, here's what we learned from this part of the literature. So there's the writing bit. You have to be able to, I couldn't agree more, you've got to be able to write. And when it comes to writing, very often less is more. But it's also about how to be a good colleague, be really helpful. You're serving someone, you're serving something in that short 3 months. If you can do that, that's probably it. And I know that's frustratingly vague, but it just, I don't know, my younger brother, who's the star in the family, so he's about to be a U.S. ambassador. He's done very well as a diplomat, and he's dealing with all these smart people who get into the foreign service and have been in all these amazing hotspots around the world. And he'll say it first thing, that the people who really stick in the foreign service and who make it all the way to the top of the diplomatic ranks are those that are just good colleagues. They're pleasant to work with. They empower their other colleagues. They make everyone feel great about their hard work, and they serve. So those things really do matter. And you're not in a meeting where you're nodding, but you're on your BlackBerry or you're on your iPad. Yeah, that's really interesting, but you're texting someone. You don't do that. You're really there. You're really present in these meetings. Rare, but valued. People talk about those things. The last of the bullet points, job market. So with my particular piece of the job market, I would say family planning is huge right now. Lots of things are, but I happen to be I'm right in the middle of the sort of big Melinda Gates sponsored family planning, re-energizing of the field that has been sort of moribund for the last 10 plus years, and it's a really great time to have any interest at all in the reproductive health / family planning sphere. There's a lot of work going on. There are a lot of dollars flying around. There's going to be tons of work that needs to be done. A lot of that work is going to be monitoring and evaluation work. How do you monitor? What is it that monitoring evaluation people do? What is the state of their sort of prep? What tools are they using? And it really isn't anything special. It's just being organized, again, being a good colleague, being able to view a problem and break it down into fairly meaningful and few terms, and then sort of understand how you attach data to that kind of framework. So sort of understanding data, what are data anyway, what are they a reflection of, where did data come from, and all of that. And you know, there are monitoring and evaluation workshops happening constantly. So try to get someone to sponsor you to get into a monitoring and evaluation workshop. If this interests you, I don't know, even if it doesn't, frankly, just join them. Because then you're in a workshop and you do small group work, you've got colleagues, and you start your network, and it's really all about a network. That's sort of that's where it's going to start. A lot of work in that area right now. But I think I'll stop now, and we'll hopefully answer lots of more of these things during the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, our last panelist is Christine Caraballo, who is with USAID with the Global Health Fellows Program 2, or am I supposed to say Roman numeral 2?
No, it's 2. Roman numeral.
She currently serves actually as the lead for the participant support team with the Public Health Institute's Global Health Fellows Program 2. Christine has broad experience implementing international health programs for over 9 years, including experience in the recruitment and support of both fellows and interns. Working with the U.S. Agency for International Development, GHFP2, currently has 120 active fellows on the program and a regular cohort of summer interns. She acquired her BA in sociology from San Diego State University and has previous experience working in criminal justice and research. Christine.
Thank you for that. Just want to get a gauge on my time because I know we're having some Q&A later.
I think you're good.
Okay.
You got some very efficient people.
Great. All right. So since I'm the last one to speak, I guess I'll make sure I'll do the check to see who's still with us. How many undergrads here? If I can get a show of hands, how many of you are undergrads? Great, that's a good fair amount. And the rest of you, I'm assuming, graduate level. And how many are pursuing a degree in Master's in Public Health? If you could raise your hand.
All right.
Okay. Just trying to get an idea of who I'm talking to. So based on my introduction, you can tell my pathway is very different from my esteemed panelists here. I'm actually not a technical public health person. My background is a little bit different, and I'll spend very little time on it because it's not where you guys are going. I actually went to school more interested in HR, got into recruitment right after, and that is how I started working with, at the time it was the Population Leadership Program, which was a fellowship program that's funded by USAID a long, long time ago. Now it's evolved, it's called Global Health Fellows Program 2, which came from 1. And for anybody who worked with USAID, or if you're going to work with USAID, they're very specific on how you call yourself. So Global Health Fellows Program 2 took us a while to keep saying the 2 after. But what we do is what I'll talk about a little bit, because it might give more context to why you guys are here. And it's more about recruiting, hiring, and placing, and supporting fellows and interns to work within USAID and get experience in doing a lot of the great work within their Global Health Bureau. And they do a lot of monitoring and evaluation, as my colleagues talked about already. A lot of work in developing countries. They're based either domestically or overseas, and they work very hands-on in some of the newer things, capacity building, the monitoring evaluation, the research. Christine did a great job of talking about really where we're going. We're not giving, none of our fellows actually do inoculations or immunizations. They're really there to help local nationals and local programs conceptualize and strategize and move their programs forward, and also with funding requests. And so a lot of the writing that was really heavily talked about here is really important. I just wanted to add on to that feature. Different pathways from our fellows. You know, our fellows, I asked how many are going with Masters in Public Health, and part of it wasn't to discourage anybody, but it was really to just see where the interests are for coming to things like this. We have fellows, some of the common degrees that they come with, just to give you an example. if your hand didn't get raised in the room, is a Master's in Public Health, Master's in Social Work, Master's of Science in Nursing, International Affairs, Public Administration, Health Science, Doctors of Medicine, Doctors of Philosophy. So anybody who didn't raise your hand with an MPH, if you're one of those, there's possible pathways into global health work as well. And that's where a lot of our fellows come into play. They do a lot of work with either getting to do with universities, doing a lot of research-based work within universities, working in the public sector, in the private sector. So there's a broad variety of backgrounds within the fellowships and within the internships too. Going down, skills I think are the most helpful or necessary in your career. We get this question a lot on the recruitment end. Anybody who does recruitment can testify to that. What do I need to look like? What should I do, and how should I present myself? You want to be very well versed in your technical field. So if whatever that is, you want to make sure you're well versed in that. But a heavy importance is also on what a lot of my other panelists have talked about here are the behavioral competencies that you're going to bring to the table. Employers are asking more and more from their employees every day, and we talked a little bit about people transitioning out and bringing in new, fresh pair of eyes into the field, and you have skills that people who are transitioning out don't have. You have some skills in technology that are very valuable to the fields that you're going into, the positions you're going into. Learn how to harness those and present those to an employer in a way that show that you can bring that added value to a program, to a position, and that you're really ready and willing to learn. You could be as technically savvy as you possibly can, but unless you're able to work in a team, unless you're able to really have that ability to build rapport with people, it's really hard. You're going to have a much harder time fighting against the current than you are if you're really open and flexible and open-minded. We use a term, but it's not really, I'm on the record, I guess, of playing nice. It is really a lot about playing nice, and it's not always giving somebody their way, but it's learning how to negotiate, how to collaborate. I don't want to go and say cliche and say being a team player, but one of the things that we tell a lot of our interns is when you go into a job, or as an internship, how many people here have done an internship in some way, shape, or form? Okay, great. So when you go into an internship, you find there's one person. It might be the person you report to directly. It might be somebody else in the organization. And that person is a person people really listen to. And you can see that because you're at the meetings, or you're there, and when they're strategizing and they're talking about all staff meetings and whatnot, and somebody there takes the lead. You want to look at the best qualities that that person's using in that role and think about, how can I do that for myself? How can I make that part of what I do in my work? How can I showcase that? And it could be different things depending on the role that that person has, but really look at that. We talk about finding a mentor and having a mentor, but somebody could be your mentor and they won't even know it, really, if you put that kind of practice into place when you go in for an internship or just any other work experience, because that's really important, and a lot of employers really appreciate that. Other pieces. They said writing, I agree. Having a second language, I think, is important. And knowing it fairly well is really important, and knowing your limitations to it as well, and being able to say that, being honest with that is appreciated. It doesn't mean you don't get the job, it just means they know where you are when you come in, and having that truth, that honesty is very helpful as well. Network, I think everybody probably does that really well, but if you're not, if that's not something on your list of things to do, networking is really important. There's so much social media out there, but making that face-to-face contact is also very helpful. You know, LinkedIn, Facebook, I don't have to preach to the choir here on that, but those are really good ways to know what's going on, to know when positions are being posted and where they're at. Best advice to students trying to enter the field. I would say try a variety of things. I think you might be surprised at what you end up liking. Everybody says, I think a lot of people assume that no one will like numbers, just based on our push to get people to like numbers. But you might be surprised. We've had an intern who she was really wanting to get out in the field and do writing, and then she did some work and she actually went back for a master's in microfinance. So it could go either way. You might find a hidden passion or a hidden love for something that you didn't know existed. So be open. If you don't get that first top internship that you went for, be open and try other things. Another job market. What is the job market like and job trends? DevX put out an article of hiring predictions earlier this year, and some of theirs, so I'll list off some of theirs because I'm not an expert. Some of their predictions for trends are human resource experts being needed, hiring and retention really being at the forefront. We touched about that a little bit here. Global health, infrastructure, food security, civil society strengthening were identified as being growth areas. Increase in monitoring and evaluation, increase in public and private partnerships, skills related to climate change. I think everybody has told me that this kind of weather is not regular, so there's a testament to that. More of an emphasis on technical knowledge and technical degrees. And they say that, but I think there's also, I do still want to emphasize some of what we said on the behavioral competency piece, because I think that's important. And then professionals with experience in Middle East and South Asia, in the Middle East and South Asia are pretty high demand, and they even said Haiti would continue to be a focus for donors. So there's that. And I don't know if I'm doing on time, I could go on, but...
Keep going.
Okay, so Global Health Fellows Program 2, and I'll be at the career fair tomorrow as well. We recruit, place, and support interns and fellows. And we also have a partnership with GlobeMed in providing internship opportunities to undergrads. So all of that is available on our website for those of you who want to do extensive detailed research, but I'll also be open to talking about that tomorrow as well and later on. Just want to hit on a few key points. For the internships that we have that are aside from our partnership with GlobeMed, you do need to have a master's degree or be enrolled in a master's degree program. And that's the minimum requirement. And then for our fellowships, if you're going to a junior fellowship, master's degree in public health, then at least 1 to 2 years of experience is required. We also have very senior level fellowship positions, and for those it's master's in public health or higher level degree depending on the position, and 10 to 15 years of experience. So we're all across the board in the seniority or type of positions that we hire for, but definitely encourage you guys to take a look at our site. And there are tons of hundreds of other sites with opportunities out there. And if any of you are like me, I was always wondering, what am I going to do the day after I graduate? So it's good that you're already here thinking about that and getting your foot in the door. Definitely encourage and hope to see you guys at the career fair.
Okay, we're going to start with the question, answer, comment session, but before we do that, I wanted to introduce a couple more people to you. So as I mentioned, I'm still Tom Robbins. I'm still the Director of Global Public Health at School of Public Health. We have 3 exceptional staff people that work with us, and I think we're very involved with organizing this, and I wanted to introduce them. If they could stand, and if you have anything you'd like to say, feel free. Starting with Chinyeri Neal, one of our assistant directors.
I'm just glad to see so many public health students here, but also just to acknowledge Emily did all the work on this program.
Okay, Janice East.
Hello everyone. I'm really glad to see everybody here, public health and otherwise, because I'm actually not from a public health background but went into international development, so I think this is a great way to hear that there are many pathways to go into this line of work, and I hope you guys can learn something from that.
And Emily Renda.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. It's good to see you all.
Okay. Is there anyone else I'm supposed to thank I don't know about?
Bill Noting.
Okay. Bill, you want to say anything?
Just we're really glad you have come to this event as part of the International Career Pathways series for its 10th year. So this is a great turnout. We're glad you came.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Andrew Nessler. I'm a first-year master's student in the School of Public Health. I have a question for you, Ms. Claypoole. How did your Peace Corps experience both influence your choice to go into public health, and then how do you use those skills now? Or do you use, or how have they impacted your work?
Yeah, sure. Am I the only student that goes to Peace Corps? Okay. This on? Okay. I loved Peace Corps. It was a really good decision for me. And if anybody's thinking about doing it, I would encourage you to do it. I've met many people throughout my life who say, oh, I wanted to do it and I didn't do it. So if you're thinking about it, I would definitely encourage you to do it. For me, even though I had done stuff overseas before, Peace Corps really was about what it was like to live in a developing country and the difficulties in getting work done there. And those difficulties still exist today. Whether there's a lack of roads, a lack of infrastructure, lack of education. And so having an understanding of what that takes both builds patience in terms of when you're working with people from developing countries and helps you to understand the situation and makes you think more creatively about what you need to do to solve them. I think the cross-cultural experience of just adapting to a new culture, being out there on your own, learning to be reliant and sometimes really lonely experiences. I mean, those are still things you experience. You know, if I have to go work in Sudan for 2 weeks now, there are still moments where I might not be connected to the people back home. I don't necessarily have access to internet or access to a telephone. And knowing that I've done that in the past and knowing that I know how to do that is really critical, especially in today's world where we're so used to being connected all the time. It's important to learn how to be on your own without those technological connections, because that will happen. Internet goes down all the time, and your friends, your families might not hear from you for 2 days, 3 days, a week. So knowing that that is something, a situation you can live with and be in is important. What do I use from it? I think one of the key things I learned from Peace Corps is there are amazing people around the world, and they are incredibly talented, and they care so much about the people around them. And it's unfortunate, but you still run into people in this industry who think they have the answers, and they go in and say, this is what we're going to do. And, learning, being in Peace Corps, I always ask the people in the room from that country, what do you want to do about this? This is not me. This is, and usually they have an answer. Usually they've thought a lot about it. And many people fail to listen. And I think listening is a key skill in this industry. Not going in thinking you know the answers. Even if you might have huge amounts of technical knowledge, inevitably you learn something about why that didn't work or the fact that that had been tried before. And so I think it taught me to listen. It taught me to really appreciate the fact that these people, they live with these issues day in and day out, and they've thought a lot more about them than I have. So I think those are sort of why I got into it, and also, what I learned from it and how I use it. Hopefully that answered your question. And I don't know I don't think that's unique to Peace Corps. I think all of us would encourage you to spend time in another country for an extended period of time. And maybe that's just studying abroad. It could be any kind of volunteer situation. It could be Peace Corps. But I would say that any position you go into in global health, they're going to ask you, what is your experience in another culture, living in another culture, and adapting to another culture?
Actually, I can add to that. Actually, I have to agree with everything that Christine's mentioned. Well, before I state anything, does anyone here can define global health for me? I mean, now I'm going to challenge you all. I'm going to ask anyone here who's brave enough to just define global health. Please.
Actually did this in your class.
Yes.
I'm going to contrast it to international health to define it. International health, I learned, was kind of like the historical way of sending in people that thought they had the knowledge and the resources to resource poor countries, and global health is more of a partnership and sharing and growing and learning what different people need out of health and how do they interact with those needs.
Okay. All right. So anyone else? I just want to know what your understanding of global health really is. See, global health is not international health. Okay, and that's very important to remember. International health is part of the global health experience. So you can certainly get a global health experience here in Michigan, right? So global health is, and as a physician, I have to tell you, I like to think of it as the context of globalization, right? I'm sure we all have heard of that term before, right? And what that is to me, is that our world is actually smaller than we really think, right? So we're not too far, and more importantly, we're not too different than those in different countries, okay? So global health to me includes health in America as well. Okay, so my colleagues in Mexico, for instance, would say, Sidney, we'd like to come to New York, and Brooklyn, New York, and do some global work with you. That's what they say to me, right? So we have a lot to learn as well. So as we think about what we can bring to different countries, we should start thinking about what other countries can do for us here, right? So that's why it's so important for us to think about what global health really is. Change something. Right? And don't be ashamed that it's been done before, because granted, everything, for the most part, have been done before. Maybe in a different way, right? But it's been done, right? So just because it's been done doesn't mean you don't have anything to add, okay? But certainly identify your purpose and what you want to change. Okay, so I would say that would be the first thing that I would give any recommendation for anyone who's interested in coming into this global health arena. But I would first understand what is global health, and then finding out what your niche is. For me, it was the whole idea of capacity building with healthcare providers. I'm a physician, and so I can add my 2 cents from a healthcare standpoint. But bear in mind, global health is a multidisciplinary approach, right? Global health involves everyone. Business, marketing, everyone. So it's not, and global health is not a closed door. So that's the third point, right? So whether you have your experience with the Peace Corps, whether you have your experience, such as mine, with the Albert Schweitzer Hospital, which I have to tell you, changed my perspective a lot. And I learned quite a bit when I was a sophomore in college with that group. But if it's business, if it's other sectors, it's fine. It's just an experience that would open your mind and open your ideas and challenge you. So I think those are the 3 points that I wanted to bring up that I didn't bring up earlier. Thank you.
Yes. Josh Bogus, also first year in the School of Public Health. And given so much that you guys talked about the importance of monitoring and evaluation and the changing role of international NGOs, funders, and the importance of capacity building, increasing private sector involvement in public health, what are the measures that you see that will be increasingly important in monitoring and evaluation as we go forward?
Thanks very much. That's a really good question. So I'll take the first crack at answering it. That's okay.
Could you repeat the question?
Oh, so Well, the question was a long one, so I'm not going to be able to repeat all of it, but the essence was sort of in this changing world with a lot of new sort of variables coming into the field, what are the measurement changes? What kind of measurements are people talking about? What will the measurement challenges be? What's sort of talking a little bit about the new measures. So in family planning, sorry to be sort of pigeonholed in a sense, but I think there's a lot of common ground there with other parts of public health. In family planning, a major challenge now that the Gates Foundation is writing a lot of grants and contracts for is to try to marry the human rights side of family planning with the quantitative counting side. How many things happened, how many pills were used, how many condoms were given out, and so forth. That countable side, the easy part of monitoring sometimes, with the possibly more challenging side of is this voluntary family planning, is this quality family planning from the client's viewpoint, is the provision of these family planning services aligned with our understanding of human rights? And there's a mandate out there that we really have to try to do much more of that. So I see a really nice trend where we're trying to maybe factor into the sort of status quo quantitative part of indicators, the more qualitative, quality-oriented. That's one place where I think we're going to see a lot of action in the next few years.
I have to agree, and I was waiting for the qualitative word to come out of your mouth actually, because I've heard a lot of quantitative, and not to give you the wrong impression. So I'm a health services researcher with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. One of the things that we learned about is the importance of numbers, right? But you have to look at the real issue here. And I think the quick answer is impact, right? We look for impact. And how do you measure impact in this arena? You can use numbers, certainly. But I suspect we need to go a little bit further, right? Because numbers doesn't really tell us the whole story, right? And this is where qualitative research, where it comes from interviewing and surveys and so forth, and focus groups, get at that, right? Get at that notion of understanding what numbers can't tell us. So I think it's a combination, and I think this field is evolving. How do we communicate to each other about what's really happening on the ground? And it's very difficult currently. And the environment, everyone brings different things to the arena, and I think that's why it's important to include everyone, as many people as possible. But that's my health services research answer. But the second part is that you can measure impact anecdotally also, right? So, someone in Haiti telling you, thank you for being here, that's impact, okay? So being able to tell the story is also impactful. So you can get real good measures with that. And by all means, it's as powerful as numbers, okay? So just remember those three things as well.
I'll just add briefly to that. I think there's been a trend, 10, 15, 20 years ago in public health. It was about numbers and sort of, as you said, the easy numbers. How many condoms, how many vaccines. But it's become apparent that that doesn't actually measure success. It just measures what's out there. And so the challenge has been about how we do measure success or impact. And I agree that it's a constant struggle, partly because what we're trying to do is constantly moving. I do think that some of the things from the private sector are becoming more important. Return on investment. So what are you actually seeing for the money that you're putting into it? And how does that get measured? And not, again, just in the number of condoms, but actually the change that's occurring. And how sustainable is that over time? And again, sustainability is a word that everybody throws out there. But I think that it's really hard to show sustainability over time, and I think a lot of people are struggling with that. The same with capacity building. We can say, oh, we've trained these people, but what does that mean in actual, them being able to do it on their own or implement it on their own? And there are no easy answers to this, but it's something that is being requested and even demanded more and more from donors, from within organizations, from the private sector. So I think people are looking in a lot of different places. One of the interesting things that's happening with monitoring and evaluation right now is the use of Salesforce. And does anybody know what Salesforce is? Salesforce is a cloud-based platform that's used in the private sector to manage clients, and has historically been used in sales to monitor sales and leads, etc. Well, the public health arena is now beginning to use that. So they're, again, using tools that are out there in the private sector and have worked, and they're saying, how do we adapt this to get at some of what we want, both technology-wise and in terms of getting more information about how well it's working. So, I mean, it's sort of an interesting field in general. I think it's a field that there's a lot happening in, and if you're interested in monitoring and evaluation, there's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, the woman there. Emily took my microphone away because she says people can always hear me. So now you have to say your name and stand up. You have to hold the microphone too.
Hi, I'm Shruti. I am a master's student in biomedical engineering. I wanted to know what sort of opportunities are there for engineers in global health.
Okay, that's terrific. I hope you come into global public health. I don't know. I'm certainly seeing that when you work at the Gates Foundation, there's a big emphasis on highly technological approaches to solving global health problems, and that's criticized a lot from the outside. Sort of those who say, "Oh, there goes Gates again, trying to solve things with some kind of a technology." But actually, there's a huge role for technology and understanding how to use it wisely. My sense from your background and your academic place is that you would be very helpful in just sort of all things technologically oriented and how they're applied in sort of various ways. One huge change that we're seeing also is the way we collect data and the level at which we collect data. Technology is playing a huge role in how we go to households and ask households in a survey context all the health-related questions that we'd ask them. We're using tablets now. We're very heavily into GIS now. That's critical because a lot of what we try to do in global health from a measurement side is to understand scale. We started something that we think is innovative here in this place, and so we're going to put that on the map, and then a year later has that same thing been scaled up. And so that in many ways sort of trying to portray that is a technological issue. So we have a lot of engineers working at the Gates Foundation. Every year, sorry I'm taking long, every year one poor soul like me has to go and stand in front of Bill Gates and tell him, and he's not even paying attention, he's looking down, but you're there. And it's really intimidating. Not so with Melinda Gates. All the rules change, but when you're with Bill Gates, you probably want to, the word is not spin, but you probably want to sort of tilt your presentation of a particular problem a little bit more toward the technological side. It's just an entree point that works. So I've had very good success with sort of things like pretty high level use of GIS, of smartphones, of sort of portable servers for rapid movement of data in the field, and is interested. And what you're really doing is just saying, we worked in these places, we collected these things, we started like this, and here's where we think we are now. And so I think there's a lot of technology and sort of engineering approaches sort of to understand in a very complex space, sort of where can we find data to tell a effective story. Very important.
So I can add to that. We actually had an intern and a few interns that came with the same background and worked in our commodities and security logistics in that area with some of our folks at USAID, and they did very well. They actually brought a lot of value added to the programs that they were working on, and took over actually a lot of projects. So it was really, I think that's a really big area for somebody with that background in engineering. The other piece I just wanted to add, the GIS, the mapping, there's quite a few folks who, we talk a little bit about generational differences. If you have a skill with something like that, with technology, with application, if that's what you love to get into, find a way to marry that with what you're doing technically, because it's really important. And you might be the one to think about something new and how to do something. But it's, there's so many new forms of technology popping up out there that if you can you be the one to make that connection and find a way to make it useful, you're in the door.
And can I jump in with one more thing? Sorry, I'm abusing my right as a panelist, but one more thing. At the foundation, there's sort of a cultural divide. There are those who work on product development. So we actually say the word product. It's a very common term at the foundation. Sort of upstream product development, all those things that we use to solve health problems that are more like a new vaccine, a new delivery model, a new sort of a delivery system. Those products and the related ways of sort of understanding those is a huge part of what it is that we do. And so that, I just wanted to make sure. I'm not in the product space, I'm more in the downstream space, but I had to say that.
Can I add something to that? And this goes out to everybody. I think when you come from a non-traditional background, such as engineering or like I did in the private sector, you're going to have to connect the dots when you go into that interview. And the person interviewing you is not there to figure it out. It's your responsibility to say, this is what I got, this is where I'm going, this is why I'm going there, and this is how it benefits you. You need to connect those dots. And if you can't do that before you walk in there, practice it. Because they're just going to sit there and say, okay, you do this and you do this, and I don't see the connection. So, and as long as you can do that, then the interviewer will get it, And even if you come from a traditional background in public health or global health, there's still probably things that you did because you wanted to do it. Maybe you took a cooking course. Well, why? What is it about cooking that you learn something or is interesting to you? That's what people want to hear about in an interview. They don't just want you to rattle off all the classes that you've taken. They want to know why those classes were important and how it got you to where you are today.
If you don't mind. So I'll hope I can answer your question using this approach. So at Doctors United for Haiti, we've been sending healthcare providers in an integrated delivery model, okay, where we have an American provider, whether they're internal medicine, pediatrician, family practitioner, or general surgeon, and we match them up with their counterpart in Haiti. So we have Haitian doctors of internal medicine, family medicine, pediatric, general medicine. And they work together side by side, and they see patients together, right? And what we are trying to do at Doctors United for Haiti, we're trying to measure this knowledge transfer that goes on between those two, right? We're trying to make knowledge transfer become, so to speak, like a vaccination, right? So if I give you a vaccine, there's no question that you have it, right? That you're immune now, right? So how can we change knowledge transfer and make it become like a vaccination for people who are living in low resources communities like Haiti? Because if that's the case, if I give you a knowledge, there's no question that you're going to use it, right? And especially if you encounter the same problem in which it'll be appropriate to use. So an engineer, I mean, there's a lot of places where you can contribute, right? In addition, we see a lot of patients in Haiti. You see, you have a Haitian doctor who sees over 150 patients a day, okay? 150 patients a day, okay? A pediatrician in Haiti. And when our doctors go down there and alleviate patient load and engage in academic activities and so forth, we need someone to help us figure out the process of care. It was not until recently where we're able to now not only track the impact of some of these patients that they see together, as opposed to patients that are not seen together. So what we're trying to do at Doctors Without Haiti requires not just physicians, right? Not just public health specialists, not even health policy. We need more than that. We need engineers, right? We need people who are from the business world, right? Who are trained differently, who look at the same cube in a different perspective. So certainly do not sell yourself short because you're not necessarily a doctor or in public health. I think we're getting away from that nowadays, right? We need more than that because that model doesn't work anymore. So you're certainly more than just relevant, okay?
Hi, my name is Chris. I'm a first-year medical school student, and I had a question for the gentleman that's working with the Gates Foundation. So I was wondering what your opinion on government-mandated family planning, such as China's one-child policy, is. And then, do you think that that's a potential solution to uncontrolled population growth?
Thank you for that question. I think, no, it's a very good question. China is such a unique model. There is no other place in the world like China. When we were just talking about this at lunch today, Janelle, when we present data for the world, it's all the data for all the countries with or without China, and that makes a big difference in terms of how you're presenting data. I mean, you know, there is enormous, certainly in the West and India, there's enormous critique of the China National Family Planning Program, still the one-child policy. And I think that we all want to recognize that when it's constitutionally mandated to abort your child under certain conditions, we in the West might say, gosh, that's wrong. I really love the idea that we can have an ethical debate about the China Family Planning Program, and that a lot of knees won't jerk, and that we really do try to see the issues. We really do try to understand what the China white paper that undergirds the population policy was trying to solve, which was more an environmental problem, actually, than just massive poverty. But there's absolutely no doubt that the new re-energized approach to global family planning is, and I'll use this verb, is striving to make sure that it is aligned with a voluntary human rights approach to family planning. And there's just no sort of nuanced approach there. However, I really appreciate that, and I think it's a valid question. And I actually wish that in contexts like this, we could have intelligent, sort of open conversations about China's approach to family planning without getting too partisan, which we certainly are these days on so many things, if you watch debates, and without being too ideologically driven, because I think it's a very important question. But that's how I would answer it. Hope that's okay.
Hello. Sorry, not good with technology. My name is Sagar, and I'm a junior in LSNA. And in 2005, we saw the first ever international health treaty of its kind, the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. Now, we're constantly talking about how the industry is shifting a bit, and I guess I'm wondering, are treaties of that nature going to become more and more commonplace as the years wear on? And that's just open to anybody, I guess.
Oh, okay, so shall I go? I'll be quick. I think treaties are very hard to do. I think it takes a huge amount of effort to get a diverse group of governments into the same conference and agree on something that's binding, to the extent that there's probably UN and involvement and people are signing off on something. The one that I can think of now is the Cairo conference. This is sort of the Cairo program of action, which was not really a treaty per se, but unless enough nations are really driven and governed by some kind of UN mandate, and their teeth to the implementation and the monitoring, I think we may have a lot of treaties, but they're really, in terms of their effect on practice and policy and results, very, very mixed.
And, you know, actually, I just wanted to add, I agree. The thing with treaties, though, I find, is that you have different countries coming together, and they all have different resources, different capabilities. So when we come and agree and say, you know, we should eradicate tobacco use or whatever the treaty may be at this point, but the real question is, how can you implement that, right? What resources do each nation have to implement these activities? So I think it's actually a step moving forward, and I think they're very important. But from the perspective of someone who I would say is on the grounds, on the front lines, you know, it's a long way up, right? Or the message is a long way down, right? So I think my approach is a little different. I like to go from bottom up, right? Live my life through examples. So as treaties are very important, I don't think there's one solution. But I think, though, there's more to it, and I think there should be more than just a treaty in place. Right?
Hi, I'm Sandia. I'm an undergrad in the math department, and I was wondering, because all of you work for organizations based in the U.S., I was wondering if you ever feel a disconnect between the needs and the goals of your organization versus the needs of the community you're working with, and how do you try to ensure that there isn't a misunderstanding of those needs because you're not necessarily at the front lines?
That's a very good question. I would like to take the lead on this one, actually. So, Doctors United for Haiti actually started in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, right? So, but yet we became more corporate, I guess, maybe more official, because lack of resources in Haiti to create that infrastructure. Therefore, it's incorporated in Pennsylvania, right? So I do agree, but I'll take it a little step further. I don't think it's necessarily where the organization is based from. I think it's how they work, right? And so I think you've mentioned this, Christine, in the idea that we know what to do based on what the needs are, right? We don't just create the idea that, okay, you know, let's just do family planning. But do they really need family planning there? Or, for instance, you know, maybe I need to treat high blood pressure in a community in North Haiti. Is that their main needs, right? So I think you have a very good point, and it seems like you're already ahead of the game there, right? Is to identify with the communities that we're interested in implementing their intervention in, and find out what the needs are, right? We do this via needs analysis and so forth, but really try to understand not only what the needs are, but the resources that they have available there in order to implement this intervention. So I think you're right, certainly. I don't think, if I may speak to everyone here, I don't think we are necessarily imposing on any particular country, whether if it's Haiti or China or any sort. But I do think, though, this approach should be looked at more critically to find out, really, are we really getting our info from the natives and not just from outer space, right? Thank you.
I'm just going to add to that quickly. There are miscommunications, and lots of them. And I think recognizing that that's going to happen is probably the key, or the first thing to helping address them. We all do sit in the United States. I think there is a constant tension between delegating responsibility and implementation to the field, which I think we all believe in, and saying, you know, we have this group of individuals in the field that are implementing, and the rules and regulations of getting taxpayer money and having to report up all the way to Congress. And there's a lot of systems in place to ensure that there's transparency and that there's no corruption, and that, you know, all of the funds, whether it's the U.S. government or any other donor, there's a checks and balance, and that automatically implements a certain amount of things have to happen back here. And I think we all struggle within the industry on how to ensure that that balance doesn't tip too much to structures and regulations and hierarchy back here that affect implementation, prevent it, or slow it down. And I think we all try to delegate as much of that to the field and give them, empower them to do that. And also support it so that we don't get in trouble with all those other things.
I have a question for Dr. Brown. Yeah, I have a question for Dr. Brown. My name is Chanyeri Neal, and I'm the Assistant Director of Global Public Health at the School of Public Health. Okay. And I have a question for Dr. Brown. In your introduction, and Tom's introduction of you, he mentioned that you had one of your graduate degrees in like urban planning or something, which I never knew. Could you tell us how your perspective or approach might differ from people that you work with who have more traditional training in the field of international and global health, based on that different educational background?
Okay. Well, I don't know. I guess there was a point in my, well, first of all, why did I do that? I mean, why did I go and get a, regional planning, urban planning, sort of a master's? I mean, I think what happens a lot is that you get out, you graduate from college, and take your time graduating. So when Tom read my year of graduation, it was 1983, I was 2 years behind, because I took time off and did things. That's stunned silence.
Let's not be beat by a decade.
And then you find a way to get an internship, or you work somewhere, you volunteer somewhere, and then you start to work sort of post-college. And then you reach this, it's so predictable, you reach a point where you kind of hit the wall, and everyone's sort of almost as a cohort, you go to graduate school, and a lot of people are doing that. And I chose urban planning. I think at that time I had spent a lot of time in Beirut and in Cairo, two very dynamic places, very very changing places, in certainly Cairo's case, very 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 large. And I just thought that a lot of the development questions I had could be sort of not completely, but partially answered by understanding why people move to urban areas, what makes an urban area work, where does the food come from, how do you gauge the health of a huge sort of a metropolitan area, how do you get past the sort of taxi ride, wow, this place looks crowded, to really understanding about poverty, about inequality. There's a lot of measurement aspects in understanding those kinds of things, urban dynamics, that would lead me into more of a measurement PhD. But I really think it's fascinating, and it's also spatial. And I really think that so much of what we're trying to understand these days are things that can be played out in this sort of spatial domain, and that's a concentration. That's a part of the campus where people are heavily into understanding space and how the variables we're interested in play out across space. I mean, that's my first crack at that answer.
I'm first year, I finished in epidemiology. My question is, which kind of things we need to get PhD?
Do you need to get a PhD?
No, I'm a master, but maybe I'm a master. I'm a first year master student in epidemiology. And some, as we study here, many people, many are my advisor, and Dr. Thomas Robbins also tell me to do PhD, so.
Well, I mean, that answers the question. Seemed like a good idea.
You have a PhD?
Yeah, I do. I loved my PhD years. I loved, back in those days, we actually went to the library because we didn't have Starbucks. But I loved it. I loved studying, but I also wanted, I was pretty sure I wanted to teach. And so that was part of what led me to making sure that the PhD was something that could be sort of in a pragmatic way valuable. There are a lot of the best colleagues that we have don't have their PhDs. In fact, I'm not even sure if we ever even know. It might not matter to us. So I think it's personal, but I think if you want to teach and be in the university, a PhD is quite standard, and it's very important to go that pathway. So that's one way to look at it.
I would reiterate that. I think it totally depends on what you want to do. If you want to be in academia, it's pretty essential. If you don't, it probably isn't. I don't have a PhD. I've thought about it on and off over the years, and then I come up to the question of, what would I like to study in depth for 5 years? And nothing has answered that yet for me. And I don't feel the need to do it until I get that answer. And maybe that's the wrong way to look at it, but that being said, I've done research studies within my work that have been equivalent to doing a PhD, where, you know, we collect the data, we analyze the data, we look at all the methodology. I mean, and that's not, you know, not to belittle a PhD, but I think I've gotten a lot of experience, practical experience through my work. And maybe that's why I don't feel the need to go do it, because I felt like I have done it in some ways. So I think it totally depends on where you're going and what you want to do. It's a big commitment if you're not sure you want to do it.
If you don't mind, I'm a medical doctor, right? So to answer your question, I have to echo what everyone is saying here, that it is really a personal decision. But I think you could possibly even link it to what exactly you want to do. What are your contributions? What is the thing that you want to change? Right? Because I like to think of everyone here are change agents and change, you know, and we're hoping to make an impact. So if you know what that is, and you identify the skills that you need to accomplish those changes or to reach those goals, then I wouldn't think of the degree approach, but if the PhD provides you a skill that's going to be important, then yes, certainly. So I would look at it more of a, just my opinion, look at it as more, what skill are you attaining to achieve your goals?
I guess I can add more from a recruitment standpoint is not to deter you from getting the PhD, but again, if what you want to get into requires that, then by all means do it, but don't think that a PhD is going to take the place of experience, because experience is equally important of what you bring to the table, and that may be way more or balance you out when you're going for a position if a PhD is technically not required.
And can I just add to that? I mean, I'm not against a PhD, but getting a PhD also in some ways limits you. People can see you in a specific area, be it research or statistics, because of that. And so people often come and say, you know, what positions are there at JSI for PhDs? And we have very few, because a lot of the work we do is actually implementation. We're not doing the type of research or academic writing that would require that. So again, it's just what you want to do.
I'm going to real quickly, put myself on the hot seat here. I think one of the reasons I gave her that advice was from having known a lot of people, met a lot of people that were working, I think, perhaps in smaller organizations than many of you sitting on this panel. I don't know how big your organization is, actually, Sidney. But it was sort of people coming to me usually with a master's, and saying, well, I'm working in this organization, and the person who's heading it has a doctorate degree, either a PhD or a medical degree, and I don't think they're as smart as I am or have as good ideas as I do, and yet I have to listen to them because I don't have this doctorate. So that was one of my reasons.
Unfortunately, you'll experience that a lot. PhD or not PhD. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter what your degree is.
So I think we talked a little bit about the behavior competencies, learning like certain behaviors and how to really sell yourself in a professional way as far as your ideas and really bringing that value added to the group. And I think there are ways that you can approach situations like that, where you can have yourself heard and have to show your value added. that you may not have to have the degree behind, because to be honest, there are people with the degrees that don't have the substance behind it, and then there are folks that don't have the degrees that just bring it all. So there's a given. Well, I mean, some people only will think about it and take what you can say if you have the degree, but you'll run into those degree having, non-degree having, either way. That's the real world out there.
Nice when we're so, not to beat on a dead horse here, I guess. So Doctors United for Haiti really was started with an idea in 2005, right? Myself and a group of Haitian residents in Haiti said, something needs to be done about this, right? So it's an idea. And we believed in this idea, and we thought it was worthwhile pursuing. So as you pursue your degree, also pursue your idea. You don't have to put it on hold and become maybe qualified or be perceived as somebody who's qualified to be able to pursue those ideas. I don't necessarily believe in that. I think anyone, for instance, Facebook, started it, with college students, right? So, I mean, Bill Gates, when you name these many different successful people, they didn't wait for a degree, right? So I don't want you to do that, but certainly pursue it. Think of it as, I need the skills. So for me, actually, getting my medical degree helped a lot, right? Because now I'm able to understand what it means to treat certain diseases, especially in the setting of Haiti, okay? So that's very helpful. But also, getting my public health degree opened up my eyes. Understanding the difference between downstream and upstream intervention, right? Very important. I mean, as a physician, I'm here. There's no way I can make a big impact as just a physician, right? And I need the help of my public health colleagues. And then now, getting a health services research degree, right? Now understanding how to communicate, how to read research, how to look at a program, evaluate it, and say, this is not working. How can we achieve better results? So, you see, those are skills that I'm learning as I move forward. And certainly, Doctors United for Haiti is benefiting from those, but again, it didn't really necessarily waited for those degrees to start. Okay?
I'm Joshua, and I'm senior studying psychology. So my interest is kind of like on mental health. So I'm not sure in the field of global health, are there many programs or projects related to mental health?
There are plenty. There are plenty of opportunities for mental health. So mental health is actually a complex situation, right? Very complex because, for instance, Haiti. If you don't understand the culture, right? If you don't understand the people, it's very hard to really do mental health. So some of my psychiatry colleagues said in Haiti, one of the things that makes them very impactful is because they're Haitians themselves. They understand the culture, they know what to identify with. And so, at diagnosing depression, depression is very difficult in a setting of Haiti. Diagnosing post-traumatic stress disorder is very difficult in the setting of Haiti because at the end of the day, Haiti's always in a state of emergency, has always been in a state of emergency, way before the earthquake, okay, way before the earthquake. So yes, the earthquake was a natural disaster, but people had PTSD in Haiti way before the earthquake. So again, it's really understanding the culture, understanding the history of the environment, and certainly I think this is a new area, a new opportunity. I guess for us at Doctors United for Haiti, we like to foster new ideas and push people towards those ideas. So we do have a mental health director in Haiti, and he's actually trying to organize ways to really communicate this to the international community on what it means to deal with certain mental diseases in Haiti. So I think, if you're interested in that area, I can certainly plug you in with these individuals.
Hi, my name is Samir. I'm a medical doctor, and I'm working on a dual degree right now in public health and business. My question is just for the panel. If you have any thoughts about management consulting for sort of a larger firm that may not necessarily specialize in global public health, but may occasionally work with the industry, what were the thoughts on using that as a means of breaking in the industry? Is it commonly used, and is there any sort of general perception in the industry?
That's a great question. So let me lead off on that. The Gates Foundation makes heavy use of management consultants, and we go to Boston Consulting Group, and we go to McKinsey. Thanks, McKinsey. Every meeting I'm in has someone from either of those two groups, and they're quite valuable. And they help us with strategy development. They help us with understanding how to interpret large sets of data. They help us just to kind of frame issues for a project that's being scoped out. A number of contracts are written for Seattle-based people to come from the home office. A number of contracts will go to them so that they reside in some country where we're doing a lot of work. So we heavily invest in those teams. And I would say people joke about how much they get paid, and that's just sort of part of the culture. But I actually think that I see myself trying to chair a lot of meetings and being really happy that those colleagues are in the room. I find it very, very helpful.
Yeah, maybe we can take one last question and wind down if anyone has one. Janet.
Hello, Janet Neese, once again, Global Public Health Initiative, School of Public Health, and I guess my question is just general for all the panelists. I think, Dr. Coupet, you raised a really important point as far as defining what is global health. And I suspect that a lot of us in this room pursue global careers, myself included, because we have an interest in traveling and learning about other cultures, or maybe we have a familial connection. And we've even heard on the panel today that, if you're going into a job, it'd be really helpful to have study abroad experience or some sort of in-country experience. I also suspect that a lot of the students may not be able to do that before they get to their first job interview. So I'm wondering how you value having experience with a vulnerable or underserved population in the U.S. as far as having global health experience.
I can start that off. So one of the major things that we focus on in our recruitment, especially in our internships, but also in a lot of our junior level fellowships, are the topic of diversity. And with that, thinking about not blowing anybody's eardrums off. Can you hear me? All right. With that, thinking about not just diversity in the general traditional forms of what you think, but in the distance travel. So I think, some of us talk about, and I think Dr. Brown spoke about a little bit, all of our own pathways and how that leads to diversity. And those are experiences nonetheless. I mean, what you learn in your home moves into what you put outside of your home and how you act and interact outside of your home. And we use that similar concept when looking at experience as well. If we can see that you're able to make that connection between this is what I've done here, this is how I see it could connect in doing something overseas, then that's really going a step ahead.
Well, I'm very glad you asked that question, actually, because I'll start with some of the innovations that we're currently piloting right now. Doctors United for Haiti believe that there is power in the diaspora community, the Haitian diaspora community. I'll throw statistics out there for you, okay? You love numbers. I believe someone loves numbers here. The Haitians, immigrants in the United States, have been providing over $2 billion in the form of remittances to Haiti annually. Annually, over $2 billion annually. in the form of remittances. And what we're attempting to do in the Haitian, in Doctors United for Haiti is working with groups in Philadelphia and in Brooklyn, New York, where we have Haitian families who are identifying their loved ones in Haiti, where they typically send $100, $200 a month to their loved ones. And what we're hoping to do is we're hoping to see if we can assist them in maybe having part of that funding that they send to their loved one to secure some of their health concerns, right? So we look at primary preventative services, right? How can we allow the diaspora to invest in a health program that can at least provide their loved ones in Haiti with the basic needs? We're currently piloting this right now in our organization, and we welcome everyone to, anyone who can participate. But to answer your question directly though, there are a lot of immigrants in the United States. In fact, the United States is a country of immigrants, right? And we have people from all over the world. And so, as I mentioned, the whole idea of global health is that global health encompasses not just the whole idea of going or crossing borders, but we have issues here in the United States. And going across borders to learn how can we better deal with the issues here we have here in the United States. Something called reverse innovation. It's so important that we understand this, because that's how we're going to understand how we can work with immigrant populations here. How can we understand them? And they're transnational, right? That's another term, right? They're transnational activities. So I'm throwing all these ideas out is to say that there's value. As global health practitioners, there is so much value of helping not just immigrant communities, but even low-income resource communities, such as in Detroit, Michigan. Understanding what do they deal with, what are their challenges. So certainly I welcome that whole idea. I think we're not as developed yet in this arena on understanding what it really means. I think people are still with this notion of, parachuting in a nation or something and delivering care, but global health is so much more. And so, I appreciate that question, but I certainly think that we have a lot of work to do in that area. But for me and members of Doctors United for Haiti, that's how we plan on dealing with that. Seeing how we can get immigrants that are from Haiti involved in the interventions that we're doing in Haiti.
Okay, thank you. So when I introduced the panel here, I made some statement about we have an amazingly deep experience of diverse. Oh, rather don't get this on, because I was crossing the deep end. When I introduced the panel at the beginning, I talked about how we had an amazingly deep experience and diverse panel, but they so far outdid what I even expected, knowing that. I found this to be myself a superlative session, and the wisdom and the complementarity of the ideas that were produced and also the insight of the questions that were asked by the audience. I thought this was a fantastic, dynamic session. I'm so glad we caught it on tape, because I think it would be something many people interested in global health issues would greatly benefit from this. So let's give a huge round of applause. Thank you. We're adjourned.